it was probably easily it's got to be between, mile 20 where all of the mental anguish starts to really hit. Why am I out here? You're a poser. You shouldn't be out here. Why are you doing this? You're not going to finish. Just like it just hits. And the only thing I can really do is put one foot in front of the other and just look at the person in front of me and just try to determine, can I pass this person? And then for that particular race, I think I got to it was probably about mile 22, 24, where another guy around my age kind of came up, and he had been kind of hanging on for a little bit as far as like maybe he would pass me and then I would pass him. And you could tell he was dragging as well. So we kind of struck up a conversation. So even at mile, 24, 25, 26, and we're running and we're exerted, we're still able to somewhat have a conversation. So you just, where you're from, what's going on. This was his first 50K. So that kind of was the camaraderie. And it was also like, oh, like what distance have you done up until this? So we had a really similar journey to that point where it was just like, it was kind of the same thing. It's like, try a 50K, it'll be fun. And at that point, neither one of us were really having fun. So I would be, I would kind of will him on. He would kind of be like, all right, let's go, let's try to do this. We'd get to the point where it's like, all right, like, let's get this next mile. We're almost done.
This is your host, Brendan, and you're listening to the Ordinary to Ultra podcast. This podcast is all about helping you run your first ultramarathon and beyond. Tune in to hear new and experienced ultra runners share how they got into running in the first place, what inspired them to run an ultra, training and race day tips, and the gripping story of their first ultramarathon. Prepare yourself to be inspired as you hear stories of grit, sometimes failure, but ultimately triumph when our guests finally cross the finish line. Hey, Jamie. Welcome to the Ordinary to Ultra podcast. Thanks for being here today and sharing your story with us. I'm really excited to hear it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
For sure, man. To kick things off, I'd like to ask you just a little bit about yourself. Just share, like how old you are, where you're from, what your family looks like, what you do for work, just to help people gauge sort of who you are and maybe if they're a similar type of person to you.
Sure. So I am, as you said, Jamie Mason, 46 years old, just turned 46 in February. So I'm an Aquarian. I live in Grafton, Ohio, which is about 30 minutes west of Cleveland, Ohio, northern part of Ohio. Mm-hmm. And I am the chief of CleveNet. CleveNet is a consortium of 47 libraries in 12 counties across the northern part of Ohio. So we kind of manage the network and also the ILS, making sure that the books get where they need to in all the patrons' hands. So it's really pretty cool. And let's see, family. I'm actually remarried, so we have a blended family. So together we have 7 kids, and this is the part where everyone loses their mind and 7 kids. So, I had 3 and she has 4. My oldest is 25, and then we have 2, a 17-year-old stepdaughter, and then a 16-year-old son, and then 2 twin 14-year-old stepsons. My daughter is 10, and then the youngest is 9. So we kind of say that we got 3 sets of twins, and then we've got the older one that oftentimes I'll actually forget. I'll say, oh, we have 6 kids, and she'll remind me. She's like, well, don't forget about Justin. And I'll be like, yeah, but he's off on his own. He's an air traffic controller in Dallas, so I'm super proud of him.
Yeah, okay. Dang. Yeah. That is a wide variety. Lots of kiddos.
Yeah.
Super cool. Super cool. I'm in a family of 4 myself. That is different. Planning on 2 kids myself too, but that may change. I've got 1 so far.
Yeah, only child for me. So it's interesting to see all that. Yeah, I'm an only child, but it's interesting to see all the kids interact and even, they all act like siblings at this point, but
Yeah.
just to see how they kind of came together, and we have our own little family union.
Yeah. I'm curious, do any of your kids, wife, anybody run with you, or is it are you a solo running show? Is that your thing?
So no one actually runs with me, but the twins are both in track, and they
Ah,
have done, which we'll probably get to when I get into the story, but they did a family 5K last year as well,
super cool.
and they did cross country. So they're both in eighth grade. They
Uh-huh.
play soccer, etc. And then most of everyone else, except for Brooklyn, the girl, plays soccer. So they do their own kind of running. And then, and she's a cheerleader, so she does kind of different activities.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, and no one really runs with me at this point. They're like,
Yeah.
who wants to go out and do a training run of 6, 7, 10 miles with dad?
Yeah.
So, and I've thought about a little bit sometimes, like I'll talk to my daughter and say, well, you could take your bike. But yeah, so
That's
for
so
the most
funny.
part, I'm doing it on my own, or I have like local running groups. I'm actually trying to get a buddy. He'll be doing his first 25K trail race this Saturday. So, I'm hoping to kind of get him trained up so he can be a pacer.
Yes. I
So,
love that. I am
yeah,
doing the
yeah,
same thing. I'm struggling to find a guy, a buddy to run with, but I've been like prodding somebody in my neighborhood that I'm friends with. He's gone running with me a few times over the past 2 months or so. And just the other day, he ran by himself of his own volition 3 miles, which is impressive. We're getting him going.
yes,
And then I had him run with me 4 miles the other day. We're getting him there. And I'm hoping he's going to do a half
good,
marathon trail race with me this summer. And then I will make him do a 50K with me someday.
right.
I'm training him
Yeah,
up.
I just text him. I'm that buddy, so I just texted him a 50K race in November, and I was like, "What do you
uh,
think? Goal race?"
I know.
So I'm
I
planting
love
those
it.
seeds, but
Exactly.
it's the mental. He's going through the same, the same, which probably a lot of people do. Is like, oh, I can't do it, and I keep telling him, you can do it. I did it. You can do it.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I wasn't even looking at ultra running, It was like I just liked running to get outside, and I was like, let's just see how far I can go. And then you kind of hit those smaller milestones of maybe 10K, then a half marathon and whatever, and then you just get there. But before we I don't know, jump around too much, I want to focus in on your story, on your background, I should say. So, Jamie, how did you get into running in the first place?
So I ran cross country and track in high school, and I was a scrawny kid growing up, and I wasn't gonna make the football team. I wasn't athletic enough for the basketball team. Plus, those two sports cut people. If you try out for the cross country team, you're just automatically on the team. So yeah, so I was running cross country. I was varsity cross country. I was in a small school in LaGrange, Ohio, but I was usually like depending on the school year, maybe fourth or fifth on the team as far as like like the times and stuff like that. And then I ran
Hmm.
distances in track, so I would do the 4x8, the 800, the mile, 2 mile. And then after high school, I got out of it. Life happens. You're in school and college and all sorts of stuff. So I completely got out of it. And then I had a couple buddies that decided that they were gonna start running, and I was like, "Well, I like to run. I'll join you." And decided so about 10 years ago, because Kensington's almost 10. I was going to do a half marathon in Canton. So I was going to do the inaugural Hall of Fame marathon that they have there now. And so I started training for that. And I did it. I got, I think it was like 2 hours and 20 minutes for that. And then again, I kind of got out of it. And life got a hold of me. And then,
Real quick,
go ahead.
when ish was that happening in your life?
The half marathon.
Yeah, yeah. When and your
So it was about
friends and
10
running
years
with your
ago. So it's
buddies.
about
Okay,
35. It's about
okay,
35.
solid.
Yeah, so like I said, my daughter was almost born, and she was born in March, and I think I ran that in April. And if I mean, you said you're from Utah, and I'm sure you've run in the winter, but training for these spring marathons in Ohio is it's just dreary and
Yeah.
icy, and it's not fun. And so at that time, I had swore I would never do a spring marathon again, and now I'm out doing all sorts of stuff all year.
Yeah, I do connect with that. It's harder to want to do trail running in the winter for me when the mountains are there and I can go skiing. So it's like usually I end up
Yeah.
road running a few times during the week. This winter it's been like 2 times a week to just keep my base fitness up. I'll do 2 6-mile runs. But yeah, my training block will probably start in the next month or so when skiing is over. So yeah, I do feel that though. It's hard not having the beautifulness of the trails and just hitting the road anyways. Um, okay, so you ran this half marathon, and then when'd you pick back up?
So it was 22, so 2000, I had gotten up to 215 pounds. I just life after the pandemic, working a stationary job, all this
Mm-hmm.
sort of stuff. So I had gone on this, I had actually decided that, so at that time I was like 43, 44, and I decided I was going to give myself until 50 to be in the best shape of my life. And the thought process there was I didn't want to do these 90-day transformations, or you always see the stuff where it's like, oh, do this for this, and you have these miraculous transformations, and usually you starve yourself and then you bounce back. And so I was like,
Yeah.
I've got to mentally flip the switch to give myself the grace and to treat this journey like a marathon. So anyway, so I started like walking and getting more active and stuff. And then my father-in-law, who he was in the army. He runs 3 days a week. He runs 3.1 miles a week, or sorry, 3.1 miles 3 times a week. And
Got
so
it.
he wanted all of the family to do this 5K. And so, we all kind of agreed on it. He's generally the one that was in the most shape, and he's 60 now. So anyway, so I was like, all right, fine. So I had to start training for this thing. So I started training in August of 22. I could barely get to a mile, and it was like a 12-minute mile. And I knew I had to get to 3. So I just, kept pushing over the course of the 3 months. Did the 5K, got in about, I think at that time I was like 33 minutes. And I
Hmm.
just have these memories of, running 17-minute 5Ks and when I was in high school. Maybe
Oh yeah.
I'll never reach my high school glory days, but I was like, I know I can do better. And then it was also the competitiveness of like, can I catch the father-in-law? Can I do this?
That's awesome.
So I just kept running. And so I found another 5K race. It was like a turkey trot. So I found a turkey trot, and that kept motivating me to continue to get out there. And then so I was like, I'll just keep doing these races like once a month, and started researching like, how to get faster and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So as I went into 2020, which was last year, I had 3 races that I was like, all right, I'll do. It's called it's a half, so it's like 6.6 miles, something like that. I was going to do a 10 miler, which I had my sights on back in 10 years ago. So it's like a local race. And then I thought, well, I'll build up to a marathon or a half marathon in September. And these were all road races. I had only done road to this point.
Okay.
But again, if you recall that 10 years ago, the buddies that I talked about that wanted to start running, which got me to do the half, they kept running. So, 10 years
Okay.
worth. So I knew the things that they were doing, and they were doing some trail running. And I've always liked the outdoors. My wife and I started hiking. So I had purchased trail shoes because I was like, well, if I'm going to hike and I think I might want to do this trail race thing, not really knowing, I'll at least get these trail shoes so I can use it for both.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reached out to one of them and I said, hey, like, what are you doing? And there was a 25K in April at Camp Manitowoc here. And it was actually aptly named the Fool's 25K. It was a 50 as well, but up to that point, that would have been the longest distance that I had ever run at one time because I had stopped at the half.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I signed up for it. I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'll see what
Yeah.
it's
Was
like. I
that
had no idea what to expect.
Yeah. Was that intimidating?
Um,
Because you're like, I'm going to be running
it,
with these folks that didn't stop. Yeah. Like, a little scary.
it was, yes, it was very intimidating. And my wife will tell you, I got very anxious. The unknown, I got very anxious like the 24 hours before the race because I was like, what if I fall off a cliff? Or what if I, like, you have this like view of like these tiny mountain ledges that you're going to be traversing on these trails.
Oh.
And so and then I was like, well, I've never run this distance. Am I not going to make it? Am I going to fail? And, it was very real.
Hmm.
24 hours before the race. And so I showed up and I ran it and I finished it. And that race, I think it was like 3 hours and maybe 10 minutes, something like that. And I
Nice.
overheard a guy at the finish line. He had actually placed third in my age group, and but he was talking to somebody, and he says, "Yeah, I finally got under 3." And I was like, "Oh, is that a thing?" Like, I was only 20 minutes away, and I walked the first 2 miles because I got caught in the back when we went to single
Uh,
track. So I had no idea how to start the race. Whereas a road race, you start wherever because it's so wide, and you can go around people. On these
yeah.
trail races, you generally can't. You gotta hit that gap before for some of the
Yeah.
people that.
It's the
So
Congo line
yeah,
or whatever they call it.
yeah. It
Um,
was very slow. And
yeah.
so anyway, so I was like, oh, so I was my buddy was there and we were kind of talking and the other thing that I realized is I'm not an ultra runner. And they're like, you're not an ultra runner until you do over the marathon. And I was like, well, that was almost a waste of time. Like, I wanted to, come out and be an ultra runner. So I was like, all right, I got to
Dang.
find a 50K. And
Okay.
yeah,
Before you hit the 50K, I want to ask a few questions. One, is this mountain range that you were running in for the 25K, is this the Appalachians, or I'm like really bad at geography for East Coast?
it wasn't even a mountain range. We have
No.
it's like a foothill. Like when I say,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
but the vision in my
Yeah.
head,
Yeah.
right,
Okay.
was that I'm going on this trail and I'm going to run the Rockies, right?
Yeah. Okay. Got
No,
it.
they're foothills. And when we say mountains in Ohio, or we say they're foothills, for you out in the West.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, like
Thank you.
I don't know what the elevation gain was on that race.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so we're not doing anything crazy in Ohio.
Okay. Yeah. I've done a marathon, so I've done longer than a 25K, I guess, because 25K is like 15 miles, I think.
15
Yeah.
and a half.
15 and a half.
Yeah.
I'm doing a 25K though this year with 3,000 feet of elevation gain. It's like straight up a mountain and then back. It's
Right. Yeah.
different, I guess. Yeah. I've never done that sort of elevation gain in a running, so that'll be new to me. Like the ultra running power hike, I think, is what they say it really is. It's not really a run. So anyhow,
Right.
cool. Thanks for clarifying. Okay. So you ran this 25K and you were like, oh, this isn't even an ultra marathon.
Right.
But you can do like half of 50K. So that's probably pretty good. Pretty good to feel that and know that.
Yeah. And then, so the other part of that was the pure exhilaration of being in the woods, being able to run, the view, it's nothing like a road race. And so I absolutely fell in love with all of that during that time. I should back up a little bit too. I had listened to David Goggins' book.
Oh, yeah. This is important.
The year before, I actually rolled my ankle within the first mile in that race because a tree root I didn't see, and because the leaves were covering it, so I didn't see a tree root, and I rolled my ankle.
Dang!
And I was just like, David Goggins ran 100 miles with a hole in his heart. He broke his leg and finished a race, and I'm like, I'm going to finish this race. And now I'm not comparing myself to him at all, but listening to that book and in some of his sayings and inspirations have fueled me in multiple races. So yeah,
that's good stuff.
So anyways, stuff. Yeah,
as
so
long
that
as you
was
don't destroy yourself. I think that's like the flip side. It's like, well, now I'm injured for the rest of my life, but as long as that doesn't happen, he is inspirational. Can I ask too, if at this point you worried about did you have a good training plan in your earlier races? did you like nutrition plan much either, or you just kind of went with the flow, did your own thing?
Um, I didn't necessarily have a training plan up until that point. I wasn't like I didn't find like a 25K running plan. It was like, do this and then taper and do all that stuff, which
Yeah.
a lot of people talk about on, like I'm on various groups on Facebook and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
a lot of people I think that's to a certain extent, I think it's a road thing. Because, there's all the training plans and the paces and stuff like that. I was on an app and I had like a training plan for like distances. But at that time, I had only programmed in the idea to do, I think it was the marathon in like September. So, the training plan up to that point was, maybe do 10 miles for a long run. So no, I would say at that point, I wasn't really training for a 25K. And then as far as nutrition, I had picked up, there's a guy I follow, Steve Shaw. He's a coach. He does my gym plan, my workout plans, as well as he had himself run multiple 50Ks and done an ultra. He actually tried to do, him and his wife recorded a documentary about doing 96 hours, a 96-hour race. So he was experienced with running. And so his advice on nutrition was you need to eat every hour. He said, don't go more than an hour without eating. And so I had gummies and I had gels. But the
Okay.
race was very well supported. So there were aid stations. I don't remember when, but they were easily
Yeah.
within any, manageable amount of time.
Great.
Um, but I didn't do every hour necessarily like I should have, and that did pay even in that first race. So I'm
Hmm.
pretty consistent now where if an hour goes by, I'm trying to take something in.
Thanks for explaining that. I think
So
these
yeah.
are things we don't consider in like the earlier, shorter, relatively shorter races, like a half, maybe, or a 15, 15 mile or 25K. You could still power through it. Like I didn't do anything, I don't think, in my first half marathon, trail half, 1,000 feet of elevation gain. And I don't think I ate anything. And I didn't do electrolytes either. I just drank water. You can make it through. But I think, yeah, as we get into 50K and like these ultras, it becomes more key so you don't like
Oh,
totally
yeah.
gas out.
I had the vest on with the two bottles
Yeah.
for that first race. And now I'm like, depending on the type of race, like a loop race, I'll carry handheld now. If I know that I've got, every 6 miles or so, I can refill. The other thing was, and I'm sure we'll get into it, as I was increasing my distances with these other races to build up to the 50K.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things about trail running is it's a tribe. You like
Yes.
people will stop and they'll run with you. They'll talk to you. And so a lot of times in these races, I'd pick their brains because these guys were doing, I'd be like, what are you running? They'll be like, oh, I'm doing the 100, the 50 miler, what we might be on, we're on the same course, etc. And, I'd just be like, oh, like, what do
uh,
you do with this? And people were so willing to share
hmm.
information. And one of the things I picked up most recently before I did that was you're so hydrated when you start the race that, the first probably 25K, you don't really need much water. And so
Hmm.
what some of the people will do is they'll put their vest or their hydration packs in the drop bag. And so that they'll pick that up later
Oh,
so that you're lighter going into your, the first maybe half or quarter of your race, and then pick up your vest and your water and stuff when you really need the hydration.
that.
That was super helpful advice.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When I
Yeah.
started my marathon, I drank my first marathon was 2 months ago about. I drank an entire Powerade before. It's like, I'm going to be, got to have all the electrolytes and like, fluids in me before. And yeah, I was super hydrated, but man, I peed like 3 times in the first 30
Yeah.
minutes. I was like, oh,
It's
freak.
a
Like, I don't know if this is a
oh,
good or a bad thing.
it's a balance, right? It's a balance, and
Uh,
especially if you're if you want to compete or at least be competitive. I'm not like I wouldn't say that I'm like you know uh um you know going to be top 10 in these races, but at the same time, like I'm entering a race, I'm racing. I'm trying. I want to beat my time. I want to beat other people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you stop for breaks, and that's where you're losing time. And yeah, so it's definitely a balance of how much to hide. I try to just stick to as much as I can my normal morning routine every day, whether it's race day or not. So like
Mm,
if I start every day with 32 ounces, I LMNT, the electrolyte mix.
got it.
So I drink that. And so I have one packet a day, at least, because you go what 8 to 10 hours overnight without anything. So I start every day with electrolytes, and then so if it's race day, I'm eating I'm drinking my electrolytes. I'm taking my multis. I'm taking my creatine because I do it every day. My body's used to it. And then it just
Smart.
depends on like the distance or whatever else as far as like, whether I'm eating a banana or some Little Debbie's or something like that. So trail racing too, the ultras, it lets you get away with, especially on race day, you can get away with eating some of those Little Debbie's and stuff like that.
I know a guy who trains exclusively on candy because he thinks gels are like way too expensive, and they are. So he just like eats gummy bears and Twizzlers and whatever. And there's some wisdom to that. It's sugar if you just need the sugar, you know. But
Right.
there are some good things in the gels too that you might miss, like some extra electrolytes or some amino acids or whatever they stick in those things. But
Yeah. Well, so another tip I picked up was, they said, a lot of people, gels and gummies, stuff like that. But a guy, he was doing, I think at that time he was doing a 50 miler, and he said, but what kind of food are you eating? Like what kind of calories?
food,
Like you actually need calories. Like you can't just get away with these gels. You need to, are you doing like a peanut butter sandwich? Are you doing, whatever? So that changed my
yeah.
mindset a little bit too. So
I was so sick of gels after the marathon. I was like, I don't want another one of these ever.
yeah.
Because I had
And then
like
if they upset your stomach,
7 of them. Yeah.
some people have the upset stomach with, gels, or if you have too many of them. So, oh, I hear you.
Yeah, I had like 7 of them. It was just so much. But it makes sense, especially for your longer, like a 50 miler. Like I can't imagine having twice as many gels as a marathon, get some real food in
No,
you. But okay.
no. And that's part of what's scary about thinking about even doing 100. It's like, what do you
How's my
do?
stomach gonna
Like,
do with that? Yeah. Um, okay. So thank you for this. That was a sweet tip session, I think, for nutrition. That should be really helpful. So you ran your 25K and you were like, oh crap, this isn't even an ultra. I need to. You knew about ultra running from your trail running friends? Is that how you were introduced to that concept, or when did ultra running get on your radar?
well, also through David Goggins.
And through
Because he had
David,
talked about,
right, right.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah, so and then so yeah, so it's like the ultra, like that's his thing, and it's like, all right, well, like I want to be this ultra runner, and
yeah.
so I had already signed. I think at that time when I signed up for that first trail race, I think I had actually signed up for like maybe two. They had like a deal. If you sign up for three races, you get. I don't know. I got like extra swag, or I might have got a discount or something. So I was like, all right. So I did when I had already had the plan. So I did that 25K, and then I think it was the next month there was a 20 miler, which originally I signed up for the 10 miler. Um,
Mm,
and then I bumped it later to the 20. Once I knew that I could do the 15 and a half, I was like, all right. So I did 20 miles. I did a 20 miler, and then I set my sights on the Buckeye Trail 50K. And again, part of that came from when I was running that first race. These two guys, they had passed me, and then we had got down to this little, going down to like this little stream, this creek, and one of the guys had slipped and hit a tree, and so he was kind of recovering. So I passed
ow.
them at that point, and then they ended up catching me again. And but when they caught me, we started up a conversation, and it's just what are you doing? What are you training for? Stuff like that. And they said this was just a training run for them. They were just out here to have fun. And I'm huffing and puffing. I'm like, what are you talking about? Having fun? And I said, yeah, some people told me about this Buckeye Trail race, and they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna do the 50K. It's fun. You should do it. And I was like, what? So, I got done. I looked into that and I was like, all right, well, I want to do a 50. This seems like a good time within the time frame. I can build up to that. So I signed up for that. But it was, and I did end up seeing those same guys on the trail. And
That's
um,
fun.
it's one of those things where, like, I would actually probably tell somebody the same thing at this point. Like, yeah, do the Buckeye. I'm going to do it this year as well. But do the
Yeah.
Buckeye. It's fun. But I know when I was running that, it was not fun. When I got to mile 20, mile like 26,
Of
at
your
that time
50.
in my you're just playing, you're willing your feet. I was willing my feet to just put one in front of the other.
Yeah.
But when I finished, it was fun. I did have fun. So I'll probably find myself on a race telling some, other beginner, do it. It's fun.
So what was the time distance between your 25K and the 50K that you did there?
So I did the 25K was April and July. So April 8th and July 8th was the difference. And then like I said, I did that 20 miler in June. So that was kind of
Okay,
the
that's
the
right.
build up. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a perfect build up. So you did 20 miler a month before, and then you had your 50K in July
Yeah.
of 23. This
Yes.
like
Yeah, this was
just
all last
happened.
year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's super recent, super fun. Okay, so that's great training. Okay, let's hear about, I'd love to hear everything you remember about how race day was, from like when you got up in the morning, like if you remember what you had for breakfast, what time it was, like detailed stuff, what you wore, like as much as you remember. Yeah, I'm not, if you don't remember some things, that's okay. But I'd love to hear like a detailed story of how this first 50K went down.
Um, yeah, let's see. So it's about an hour away. So I was probably up about 5:30 the day of the race. The night before, so that's where the anxiety kicks in, right? So up until
Yeah.
this point, I had done these other races, but I'd never done a 50K. I didn't know if I
Mm-hmm.
could do it. I didn't know if I was going to finish. Trying to think about what am like nutrition, like laying that out the night before. What am I going to eat on the way there? What's my timing look like? At this one, I don't remember. I don't think I had my packet pickup because it was an hour away. So for this race, I also had to get there and do packet pickup. So I was going to have to wait in line for packet. And then, of
Mm-hmm.
course, and you can obviously edit this out, but there's always the bathroom stop, right? Before every race, inevitably, you got to
I'm not
poop.
editing that
There's the
out.
line.
No, this is
You
important.
you have to be prepared that you're going to have to poop before the race. And how are you going to do that? And it's just a matter of time of when and being in that line as well, which
Yeah.
which is pretty
Oh, and it's
crazy.
bad. I'm
It
glad you
is.
say that. The marathon pooper line, well, like I got there and I got in line immediately when the bus arrived, because and I'm glad I did, because yeah, that line, it's just continuous from the moment the bus lands. Yeah, getting back in line like 10 minutes before the race, you're probably not going to make it in time.
If you're
So,
lucky, if you're lucky, they'll have multiple porta potties, right? They'll have
along the
like a
race.
ton of them.
Yeah, true.
This race was in a metro park in Ohio and part of the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. So national park, metro park, so it was within the park system. So they had a building. It was one for the men and one for the women. There might have been two
Dang.
toilets, so at least you're getting a couple people in.
It's not a
But yeah,
lot.
so that's all the things to think about. But so I had settled on at that by that time, having done the two other races. One banana wasn't enough for me, so I knew to bring two. So I was eating two bananas. I had the Little Debbie, the big Little Debbie fudge round, and the Little Debbie Star Crunch. Those were my favorites when I was a kid. So that's a pre-race day just for the simple sugars, easy digestion. That's what you want to. You don't want the cramps. Me, that's what I want. Um,
Definitely.
and then I had I used the honey stinger gels and gummies. So
Okay.
I tried to do, I think I had three of each thinking that I'll be out there for at least 6 hours, possibly seven, and I would alternate them. So I would have like a gummy, which are actually my favorites. I prefer the gummies at this point. But I would have a gummy and then a gel. That was the idea on top of the aid stations.
Mm-hmm.
This race was an out and back. So
Mm-hmm.
we ran half of it one way and then came back the other way, which I thought was really cool. I still like out and backs to the sense that you get to see every other runner. So I thought that was cool going into the race, and it was as cool as I thought it would be. And I still enjoy an out and back for that sense. It's a little intimidating when you see the top guy coming back at you and
Yeah.
way too soon,
Yeah.
you know, but you get to, some of my buddies were in there and they were faster than me. So I at least got to say something to them, high five on, when they were on their way back.
Yeah.
So anyway, so this one had the turn at the halfway point. This was so I'd picked up the advice about the drop bag. They had drop
Okay.
bag services. So I loaded my vest, the two flasks. I don't have a bladder in the back.
Yeah.
So I had the two
Mm-hmm.
flasks. One of them had my electrolytes in it, and one of them was just plain water.
Okay.
So that was full. This was actually, and it was a mistake, but this was, I thought, oh, I'll take this peanut butter and jelly sandwich with me because, that's going to give me some, substance and all this. So packed the peanut butter and jelly in the bag and put that for the drop. So first half, I have a handheld, and there were at least, I think, 2 to 3 aid stations along the way. So I was able to refill as needed, lightweight. Didn't need to do anything more than that. That
Mm-hmm.
race, I had gone to the local running store and I bought a new tank top. So I wore a tank top that day. And that was really it as far as prep.
Okay.
So like I said, an hour drive. I don't ever have a problem waking up on race days. I think it's the you don't want to be late.
Yeah,
Oh shit, the alarm don't work.
yeah.
Again, sorry. Edit that out. But anyways, it's the alarm doesn't work or you're late. It's almost this panic. I think sometimes I don't know if I sleep as well pre-race, but yeah, so I get up. I've already got my shoes. My shoes are laying by the door. I run in a headband. So that's by the door, usually in one of those cinch sacks. I've got my AirPods. I did run that one with the AirPods. So I do try to listen to music if I can. I got my Apple Watch Ultra, which is not long enough for a 50K, even on full
No.
charge. So no, I will be looking. I know, it's not. Yeah, I'm looking into a new watch. But anyways.
Yeah.
So yeah, got the watch, shoes are ready, outfit is already, laid out. So, the socks, etc. So I can just get out of bed and throw the stuff on, down my electrolytes, and head out the door. So
Okay.
that's kind of pre-race. Get there, get the bib. Line is not too crazy for that. Go to the bathroom and then you head back to the car. If I know people at the race, so that when I did, I'm text, hey, where are you? How you doing? What's going on? So I might stop at their car and see what's going on. Generally, I'll try to get to a race at least I like an hour just to kind of work out some of the anxiety. I don't really want to be too rushed.
Same.
And then, so a lot of that time, half hour or so is eaten up with all the other activities. So then it's time to put, I'll take my Crocs off or my sandals. I'll put my trail shoes on, just actually get ready for the race. Do some some warm-ups. I don't run, I don't do like a warm-up run. That may change this year with the injuries that I've had, but generally I don't do a warm-up run. I'll maybe do some stretches.
You mean before the race starts? You don't.
Yeah,
You
then
don't
I'm
do
just, before the
special
race
warm up.
starts.
A warm up run, I should say. I did
No,
see
I don't
some
have
people
anything
doing
right
that.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some people will do like a full 5K
Dang.
beforehand.
Yeah. It makes sense because,
and maybe and like I said, maybe I'll start doing that. I don't know.
It makes sense. I think the principle is whether it's before the race or the first few miles of the race, you need a warm up. You should not go all out without having done a warm up. And so what I treat the first 2-3 miles of a race as a warm up, doing like a 10-minute mile or whatever minute mile is your warm up. and then start cooking after that. But if you're really going for a time, then you probably want to do that before warm
And
up.
that very well could be why I developed calf issues throughout the season last
Really,
year. So I'm definitely concentrating a lot more on, taking care of, what kind of stretches do I need to do before or after. But at that
yeah,
point, there wasn't, I was the type, honestly, because one, I guess I just felt like I was younger than my body was. I want to show up. I want to get out of the car. I want to run. I want to get in the car and I want to go. That it's just, that was just how it was. And you learn quickly that you can't do that. So the race started and it was a good, I would say at least 3 miles of like, we're running in this wide open path in the woods. You feel good. You get caught. I get caught up in that first, where I'm going too fast, faster than I should. So, I'm looking at my watch a couple times and seeing, 155 on the heart rate already. So that's a little bit of a checker for me. Where I'll be like, all right, remember you're doing 50K or whatever
yeah.
distance I'm doing. But
What
yeah,
zone
it's like,
is that for you? Is that zone 3, zone 2, zone where is that
150
for
is,
you?
yeah, that's in zone 3 for me.
Yeah, okay. So that makes sense. You're like, okay, we're gonna take this down to zone 2 or something.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So just started too fast. But I generally start every race too fast. I had learned from the previous races not to get caught in the back. So I actually will line up at least in the front quarter of a pack at the start line. I'm not silly enough to think that I should be close to the start line. Generally, those guys are going all out, but definitely the first quarter, 25% or so for whatever pack is there, because I don't want to get caught in that type of situation again. But this was wide open anyways, so we're
Lots
running,
of passing.
yeah, and that was pretty much the start of it. I kind of remember the woods. It would, like I said, it's Cuyahoga Valley National Park. I've got the hills, the inclines. Even on these races, we're generally hiking the elevations. It's all about the heart. It's all about monitoring and moderating your heart. If I'm not to the point where I really can run some of these inclines even. So I'm walking the inclines,
Mhm.
but I sprint. I go all out on the downs. One, I love it. I like it. It brings exhilaration, but that's also where I find that I make up time. So, I don't really care about the people that are running up the hill ahead of me, especially if they're kind of in the group that I'm at, because I'm going to see them again on the down. Then that's dangerous too. But, I think sometimes I think on those, like, if I hit one rock the wrong way or if I hit a root the wrong way, but I let gravity take its course and I kind of gazelle it down. You're kind of bouncing a little bit depending on the trail. Um,
It's
so I
interesting. Thanks for
yeah,
sharing that because everyone's different. Like some people are like, yeah, I'm going to truck it down the downs because yeah, I'm going to make up time. And you're right, it's fun. It is fun to truck it down a hill. Some people it murders their knees or it murders
right.
their ankles or something. So maybe you don't do that or you try it and it doesn't work for you. Or yeah, maybe you're the strong hill hiker, hill runner, and that is your thing. And then you take it easy on the downs because the downs hurt you more. Like everyone's different, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's cool that's your
Now, also remember that was the first half. So on the way back,
okay. Maybe you felt it later.
when I'm after that turn, it was my quads, my knees, my hips were just like they were aching.
Yeah,
And so it was, even on the downs, I would maybe speed up or I would try to go a little bit more than I don't try to resist it as much. That's just I feel like for me, the more I resist the down, the more like pressure I'm exerting or more energy that I'm losing.
true.
Um, but that one, it was painful.
Yeah,
It was
the
just
whole
the
second
fatigue. It
half, you're
was the
saying?
fatigue of the muscles. Yeah, the second half for sure.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so yeah, made it there, made it to the turn. There's lines at the turn, there's lines at the aid station because people are getting water, stuff like that. So it was really cool. I just went, I found my bag, I threw my bag on, grabbed the peanut butter and jelly sandwich on the way back. So I started, and I was walking back out of the aid station, but I didn't have to wait in the line and eating this peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And so I won't do that again. I think for me, I had never trained it that way. And so I broke the number one golden rule is don't ever do anything in a race that you haven't done in training.
Yeah.
And I think the peanut butter slowed the digestion down so much that it really stuck with me much longer than I had really anticipated. So that probably won't be. I'll probably try to experiment with some other type of high calorie, quick digesting food at like a turn in races. But that was the one and only time I had done a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But it was really convenient for the vest. So it was already filled. It was cold, and I just went back. And then, so on the way back, again, you're seeing, I'm seeing a couple people that I know that are, still trying to get there. And I would say it was probably easily it's got to be between, mile 20, where all of the mental anguish starts to really hit. Why am I out here? You're a poser. You shouldn't be out here. Why are you doing this? You're not going to finish. Just like it just hits. And the only thing I can really do is put one foot in front of the other and just look at the person in front of me and just try to determine, can I pass this person? And can I just work my way up to passing them? It's still, for me, as competitive as I am, if somebody's passing me, I've gotten past that a little bit to this extent because I'm just like, don't compare yourself to anyone else. You're out here, you're doing it. You don't know what they're just the same as the person I'm passing doesn't know that I did maybe a 10-minute mile on the first, or 11-minute mile in the first half. And now I can increase it a little bit. You don't know what that other person's doing. It's just, that's where it really becomes the mental game and where the mind will truly give up before the body, because the body can do it. And then for that particular race, I think I got to about mile 22, 24, where another guy around my age kind of came up, and he had been kind of hanging on for a little bit as far as like maybe he would pass me and then I would pass him. And you could tell he was dragging as well. So we kind of struck up a conversation. So even at mile 24, 25, 26, and we're running and we're exerted, we're still able to somewhat have a conversation. So you just, where you're from, what's going on. This was his first 50K. So that kind of was the camaraderie. And it was also like, what distance have you done up until this? So we had a really similar journey to that point where it was just like, it was kind of the same thing. It's like, try a 50K. It'll be fun. And at that point, neither one of us were really having fun. And then, nice. And then it got to like, yeah. So I would be, I would kind of will him on. He would kind of be like, all right, let's go. Let's try to do this. We'd get to the point where it's like, all right, like, let's get this next mile. And we're almost done. So that was actually for that race. I didn't even get his name, unfortunately, but, that was a cool effort. I felt like, we weren't really a team, but helping each other out with that, common goals, common journey. Encountered a horse, a couple horse riders on the trail. So these are, like I said, these are public parks, national parks, open to horses. Some of the trails that we're running on, horses have the right of way. So these particular people on these horses, they knew we were running. They knew we were running a race, and they're like, "Oh no, come on!" So I stopped, and I was like, I got off the trail, and I was like, "No, you got the right of way. This gives me a chance to catch my breath. So just let the horses go by and then get back up." But yeah, so.
Was
there
it
was that. That was probably, I don't know, maybe 2-3 miles to go. What's that?
Was it hard to get going again? like, yeah, at that point?
Yes. It's yeah, every time you would. So there was a couple things, right? So one, I would come around a bend and I would hope for an incline because mentally I'm allowed to walk on the incline, right?
And what so the brain does to you.
Yeah. But I'm not allowed to walk on the trail, right? Yeah. It's just, it's part of that. So mentally, and so like, I come around a bend and I'm like, is there an incline? But yeah, but even, you'd get up at the top of this incline and you'd go like, maybe the first couple, you'd go like 5 feet, right? And you just start running. And then eventually it's like 10 feet. And then it's like 20 feet. And it's like you're willing yourself to get back up to some type of pace towards the end. And then what happened? So after the horses, I saw a sign and it said to this lodge, which was where the start line was, right? So
0.8.
0.8 of a mile.
0.8 what?
And
0.8
or maybe
years?
it said, I forget what it said. It said it gave a distance, but I
Okay.
read it as 800 meters. And so I'm
Oh,
like,
and you speak that language.
it's time to kick. So I start to pick up a little bit. I'm like, all right, like this is good. And then I realized at some point, like I was actually like, it wasn't, I don't remember exactly what it was now. It's somewhat of a blur. It wasn't 800 meters. It was like 1.8 miles or something. I was not as close to the finish line as I thought.
Oh,
So
dang.
that was a little bit of a breakdown. And then, and then I did finally get to like the clearing, and you've got the people, and I was still able, every race I've done, I've still been able to put a kick in. And it's like, who can I pass? What can I, just, I gotta, sprint. It probably isn't feels like a sprint, but I'm kicking it up a notch for still, the kicks at the end of these races. So that was good. My son, so the son I talked about, the 25-year-old, he was actually in town. He had come to the race, so he was the only family member of mine. My friends had finished ahead of time, but so my son was there and he was recording. So that was really nice as well. So yeah, I got in, did 6. So I thought that was really good time, for my first 50K. And,
Yeah.
yeah, so, that was the first 50.
How'd you feel like when you cross the finish line? Are you like, that sucked, I'm never doing that again, or that was amazing, here I am, glorious moment? Or like, how'd you feel? Because some people it hits like gloriously, it's like spiritual almost, and some people are like, not like, it just does not hit like that at all. So how was it?
So for me, the finish is glorious. Now, usually what I'm doing is I cross that finish line, I'm slowing down to a walk, and I'm looking for the beer. Like that's the thing. Like I'm looking like where's the beer tent, right? Whether it's a race that includes beer or whether I've got to buy some. But that's usually the first carb that I'm trying to ingest. I don't know. I've read some things lately where they're like, yeah, it's really not a good recovery drink, whatever, whatever. But that's generally what I'm looking for. And it never, ever, ever tastes as good as it does after a race.
I bet.
But all of the things, all of those mental battles that I had during the race, all of the doubts, all of the anxiety pre-race day, all of that goes out the like I can tell you all that stuff now, like reflecting back on it. But once I cross the finish line, there's none of that. It really is that glorious feeling. I did it. It's a sense of accomplishment. And then of course, depending on the race, I'm also then trying to figure out like where, you know, who I know, where they finished, if they're still out there. Do I got to get to the finish line to cheer them on? When are they coming in? Those types of things. And now I try to make sure, I definitely make sure I get some of the initial stretching in. So making sure I'm doing quads, hamstrings, calves for sure, at least initially. And then I'll try to do, whether I do foam rolling or something like that later, but initially right after the race. That particular race, though, my buddy was by the finish line. He was waiting for other people, and I sat down, and I sat down in a chair, and I couldn't get up. I cramped up, and
Oh, that's not
I
funny.
like my 24-year-old son at the time, because we were gonna go. I think I was gonna go back to the car, and I'd only been there for like maybe 5 or 10 minutes. He had to help me up, so it was pretty crazy. So I definitely try to stay up and agile for a good, 15, 20 minutes or so, and then also try to find some food sources. And then
Yeah.
generally once I finally get home, we're going Mexican. That's what we're doing. I'm having chips. I'm having all of the Mexican food with at least a margarita. So that's just kind of my, what I do. The family now, I don't know if they definitely don't look forward to race day because I'm gone, but I do think that they might look forward to it because they know we're going out to eat afterwards. Because you're burning, I'll burn 4,000 calories in one of these races, and I'm not putting that many in. So
Not nearly. Yeah, I was
no,
ravenous went directly after my first marathon, directly to Panda Express and downed a
yeah,
bigger
oh
plate
yeah,
of orange
yep.
chicken, and it was
And it probably
glorious.
never tasted so good either, did it?
Yeah, it's true for that. It's true for like camping when you like don't get good food and you come, or maybe you cook something warm when you're camping and you're like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Or you got to
Yeah,
eat get a burger after camping. You're like, oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, it hits different in those situations, huh? I love that Mexican. That's a good
yeah,
idea. That will
right.
hit right. Oh, that's awesome, man. That's your first. Congratulations. And
Thank you.
I know that since then you've run a few other ultra marathons. This was, I think you said July that you ran this 50K. So what have you done since then? Just a quick summary.
So in the I did a half. These are all trails. I did a half marathon, I did a full marathon, and I did two other 50Ks. I had set my sights on a 50 miler after the 50K, and that was so I was kind of ramping up to do that, and unfortunately I tore one of my calf muscles on like a routine training run. And so I was kind of battling that for the rest of the year after that. So that's one of the reasons where like the rehab now especially is very important. And I realize that because it, happens to me. And I realize I probably did things wrong, as we talked about, not having a routine pre-race, etc. So yeah, so
Dang.
I did three other 50Ks. And really the goal for me now is somewhat to I want to try to put in enough mileage training that if I find a race that I like, I could practice, I can sign up without necessarily having to like have a training plan or ramp up additional training or, whatever. Like, to be able to kind of do a 50K, once a month if I wanted to. So that's kind of the goal now. Um,
That's really
but
cool. Like a
yeah, so
lifestyle thing. It's like we're not just doing this in seasons. It's like I want to make this a part of your
yeah.
regular life.
Yeah, because I hear about, I generally on Mondays I run with the group, so we run about 6 miles every Monday, and I hear some of their stories, and like this one lady, she did the Trans Rockies last year, which is a 6 day, 20 miles a day through the Rockies, and it's just like that sounds like such a cool race. Or somebody
Dang.
else will say, like another buddy, he was out in Utah and he ran one of the like a rim race out there. And it's like that sounds so cool. And so you start to kind of dream about these races.
Yeah, yeah. You get
Yeah.
your wheels turning. There's some sweet things, sweet opportunities out there.
Yeah, so to, kind of keep those in mind, it's like, oh, maybe next year I'll venture, originally I wanted to, what I wanted to do this year, had I not gotten hurt, is I was going to try to really get into Laurel Highlands out in Pennsylvania. But that race sold out real quick.
Hmm.
And this was the first year I realized how that works, that January 1st deadline, where like, some of these popular races or, bigger races are like, it's literally like, if you're not there, these things sell out. Um,
Yeah,
but
in
so
minutes.
I've started to kind of like look what's maybe an easy drive outside of
Hmm.
Ohio. So, I'm looking at Pennsylvania. There's I forget what it's called. There's one in the I think it's West River Gorge in West Virginia. So there's a couple like 50s and hundreds there. Um, and then, just kind of like venturing out a little bit, and then maybe I'll set my sights on something like maybe going to Georgia, or, I got friends in North Carolina, so it's like, all right, well, let's take a trip to North Carolina. I'll run a race and you can visit with our friends or whatever. So yeah, and
Nice.
I find myself sometimes just going through Ultra Sign Up on my phone and just looking at races and just like what's coming up, what kind of distances can I do? Like this looks like a cool race, and I'll read about races, and it's really crazy.
Yeah, man.
I hope, do you do that too? I hope I'm not the only one, because
No, you're not. It hits me, and I'm like, I mean, I've already got this 50K for me this year. It'll be my first, but no, I'm already thinking, what's the 50 miler going to be? I gotta,
yep.
get on there. And like, I'm not signing up for that until it's closer. I'm like trying to stop myself just so I can make a, I don't know, more
Yeah, I
informed
got
decision
burned.
based on how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, I got burned a couple times last year with that, where I'd signed up for these races, and this glorious plan, and then I got hurt, and
Yeah.
there's no refunds. So
Yeah.
I've kind of taken that a little bit too, like where I'm like, all right, I can't pull the trigger too early on this stuff. I got to kind of see what's going on.
Yeah, the flip is like it's good to sign up for a race because then, you're held accountable like in your head and
Yep.
by the money you've spent to like do it, which is great. So have a race and sign up for it. But yeah, like I think many of us that get into ultra running, it's like, yeah, you get the bug and it's like, and you want to jump ahead. You're like, I'm ready for the next thing, even before you've done it, or right after you do it. And that's a good thing. It's motivating, but yeah, maybe there's a throttle to be applied on it too.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Right.
interesting
It's a
stuff.
balance, right? I mean, with all of
Balance.
it, it's a balance of what you can truly do, the balance of, you got to juggle family and getting your training runs in and all that.
And not
It's all a
rushing it
balance.
either. I'm not about rushing it. Like many people will like do a trail half and then immediately jump into a 50 miler, and like that's fine. Everyone's different. But for me, I kind of am enjoying this season of my life where I'm like, I know I want to be an ultra runner and I want to do these distances, so I'm just going to take it slow and like hit all those middle distances that lead up to hopefully eventually 100 miler, right? So I'm not going to be skipping the 50 miler or the 100K, even though 100K is only like 10 more miles than a 50 miler. It's like I want to do them all and like
Are
just like
you,
experience all of those.
yeah, I hear you. And it's same, but are you to the point yet where I do this with my other running friends and I'm like, oh, it's only a 5K. It's only a 10K. Like, are you to that point yet in like your ultra, like where you're like, unless it's 50K or more, like it's just a warm up, or like I struggled. So I actually have, I don't know if I told you, I have a 25K trail race this Saturday,
Oh,
and
cool.
I'm trying to get a buddy of mine to get into trail racing. And
Yes.
part of it's selfish because I want to have a pacer for when I do 100 miles. But also, it's just like, it's nice to actually have like an actual buddy. Like, if you can have that perfect person where like you get along with them and you kind of go at the same pace and you can, you know, be on the trails together and stuff. So he's doing this 25K. And I really struggled now signing up for a 25K because I was like it was beneath me. And I was like, that's just crazy. Like you gotta check yourself. And that was
Check
something,
yourself.
but I'm going into this race and I'm like, and I told him, I said, I'll run with you the whole time. I'll give you the tips, the advice, like, okay, we're going to walk this incline, or we're going to do this, or no, like we have to stop at this aid station, or, fill up here, kind of coaching so that he gets comfortable with it and knows, rather than like me where I had, where I'm just out there running a 25K and having no idea what I'm doing necessarily. But yeah, I did like have a little bit of a mental battle with myself. Like, no, you're allowed to run a 25. You're allowed to enjoy running. You're allowed to have fun while you're out there. Like, this doesn't, if it's only about the competition, and if it's only about the pace that you're running, or it's only about the time that you're doing,
Hmm.
it becomes a job. And I think that
Yeah,
sometimes
that's
maybe we might
dangerous.
forget the actual love that got us into this, right? Most of us, most of us probably had some type of goal when we started running, but we kept running because we liked it. And sometimes I think we run ourselves out of it.
Yeah, that is true. I think you need to be careful about it. Yeah, if you're always pushing yourself too much and forgetting the the basic enjoyment of being in the outdoors. I think for many people, ultra running is an outlet for being outside and having an adventure, and that's so important. So yeah, just not always not always pushing yourself to like get the crazy time or dropping down to do a fun, shorter race. Like, I think that's really important. And there's other ways to be stimulated by the shorter races. Like, I've done a half marathon and a full marathon. I'm going to do another half marathon and then a 25K this year. And those would be beneath me because I've run longer than that, right? It's like, yeah, I know I can do that, but it's like training. It's training for my 50K. So it is serving that purpose, and it's fun to be at a race event, the electric vibes of everyone, like, being pumped to be there and running. There's just a vibe to the races that just energizes, and it's just fun to be there regardless of your purpose maybe for being there. Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. Wrapping things up, Jamie, there's many folks listening to this podcast that are new. Like me, like you were new. I just a few months ago new to ultra running, hadn't run your first ultra before. If you were to give them one last piece of advice, what would that be?
Say, just keep going. I mean, not to be cliche, but truly, like even talking to, like I said, with this buddy that I'm trying to, and I'm pushing him, and I'm pushing him probably a little harder than, because I know he can do it. I would say, don't listen to the voices in your head. Don't listen to the doubts. Have fun and just keep going. And then once you're out there, it's really the same thing. It's keep going, put one foot in front of the other, because you're not going to feel like it. Your brain's going to tell you to stop. You're going to have all these other demons, and just keep going. And it's simple, but it's not.
Yeah, I think you feel it in the moment. It's hard to connect with that advice until it hits you, I think. And it will. And hopefully, listeners will remember that advice of, just keep going. You can do it. Your brain doesn't know sometimes, doesn't know its potential. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, like, once you finish, to tell people, like, I think anymore, identifying as an ultra runner or telling people, I did a 50K, and they're like, what? Like, people hear about marathons, and that in itself is a feat. Like, and I don't mean to belittle anyone. I certainly don't mean to belittle anyone. If you're doing a 5K, congrats to you. That is awesome. Finishing any distance, any race is awesome. Like, don't ever feel bad about those races. But like, if you want to be an ultra runner and you finish a race, and then you tell somebody that you're like, oh yeah, I just ran 50K, and they're like, what? And they're like, well, how far is that? And you're like, well, 31 miles. And they're like, what? It's just the reaction. Sometimes I think that keeps me going as well, is to be able to have finished, but to tell people you have finished, that carries with it, I think, much more glory than finishing.
It's true. Yeah, it feels good. And there's not a problem with that either. I think you should be able to feel proud you should definitely feel proud. And it is fun when when you tell somebody how far you ran, and they're like, are you crazy?
It's like, right. Yeah. No, so it's fun. Constant. And it's like, but then also too, to think you're like within like what, probably, I don't know what the stats are, but maybe 1% of the population.
True.
That have finished these, longer than marathon races.
Yeah.
And most people I talk to, honestly, I'll be like, what's your goal for this race? And they'll be like, to finish. And that's really, so like, again, back to the beginner, most everyone else that's out there and running these races, all they want to do is get to the finish line too. It's the common goal, and it's a feat each and every race to get to that finish line.
Agreed. Y'all can do it. Y'all listening, you're going to do it. Hopefully this year. It's early 2024. It's March. If you haven't signed up for something already, it's time. I'd say, if you're already running a half marathon distance, or maybe even a little less, you can do it. You're ready. 50K, you could do it. Skip the marathon if you want, whatever. Let's make it happen this year. Thanks again, Jamie. Thanks for your story, your tips. I loved hearing it. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And I might be in Utah in October, so I'll look you up. We might be able to get a run in. So
let's do it. Please
I'll look you up. I'll let you know. All right. Thanks.
Hey, your host, Brendan here. I just wanted to thank you personally for listening to today's episode. As someone preparing for my own first ultramarathon, I've found these conversations to be super valuable, and I hope they are for you as well. Whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or somewhere else, make sure to follow or subscribe so you know when the next episode comes out. Also, make sure you check out the show notes of this episode. There's a link to sign up for the Ordinary to Ultra email newsletter, to join our Facebook and Strava groups where you can meet other people striving to run their first ultra marathon, and see any links that our guests may have provided as well. Thanks again, and we'll catch you in the next episode.